Evening. Welcome to our Candidates Forum. My name is Alice Pernick. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Mamaroneck and Larchmont. And our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. We neither support nor oppose any of the candidates. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from candidates in two races. First, we'll hear from two candidates for the position of mayor of the village of Mamaroneck, and they'll be followed by two candidates vying for one position on the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees. Now, we had also hoped to host tonight the two candidates for county legislator for District 7, our district, who are Catherine Parker and Katie Manger. Ms. Parker agreed to participate. Ms. Manger's campaign manager informed us that Ms. Manger would be declining because of a scheduling conflict. Although we are disappointed that we can't present the candidates in this important race, our leagues are the State League, the National League's nonpartisan policy does not allow us to host a forum for a race in which there's only one candidate present. So we regret deeply that our voters will not have the opportunity to hear these candidates address our questions and concerns. I do want to tell you about the referendums that you will find on your ballot this year. Two are New York State referendums, and one is a local Village of Mamaroneck referendum. The first New York State referendum would allow small city school districts to have the same debt limit as all other school districts. The second state referendum extends for 10 more years an exception to the limit on debt that can be incurred by counties, cities, towns, and villages. The purpose of this exception is to facilitate sewage treatment and disposal construction projects. The local Village of Mamaroneck referendum would lengthen the term of office from 2 to 4 years for all village board members, including the mayor, and change the village election cycle so that elections would be held every other year instead of every year, as is currently the case. For more election information and to see what else will be on your ballot, visit our League of Women Voters site, which is vote411.org. All you have to do is enter your address, and all your races and ballot measures will come up. You can also find information about polling locations and hours and voting by absentee ballot on the County Board of Elections website, which is citizenparticipation.westchestergov.com. And as a reminder, early voting will begin this Saturday, October 28th, and continue through Sunday, November 5th. Voters are able to cast their ballots early at any of Westchester County's designated early voting locations, including right here at the Mamaroneck Town Center. For those who don't vote early, Election Day this year will be on Tuesday, November 7th. On that day, you must vote at your usual assigned polling site from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. To help keep you informed, these debates are provided by the League of Women Voters of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We are a small but mighty group of volunteers. In addition to candidate forums, we sponsor local students to participate in the State League's Students Inside Albany program. We host an annual luncheon this year with Speaker New York State Attorney General Letitia James. At our annual meeting this year, we honored Mamaroneck High School teacher Joe Liberti with our Defending Democracy Award. We contribute our local information to the Vote 411 Voters Guide I just told you about. We welcome new citizens at Naturalization Court and encourage them to vote. We mentor high school civics students, we study local issues, and we register voters. We keep you informed via our lwvlm.org website, our Facebook page, and our informational email blasts about local, county, state, and federal elections, school board elections, budget votes, and other issues you care about, including voting, the environment, and equal rights laws. We also advocate for voters locally. During this past year, we advocated for more transparency and communication from the Mamaroneck School District regarding school board elections. We advocated to the County Board of Elections for greater transparency and accountability after concerns were raised following our last village election in November of 2022. And you remember the local ballot measure I just told you about? We went to Village Hall to advocate that the proposed changes to terms of office and the election cycle be decided by the voters in a ballot measure rather than decided by the 5 members of the board. All of these activities are accomplished by the very small but dedicated number of League members who actively participate. In order to continue to serve the community, we need more active participants in our local league. So while we're always looking for new members to join us, we also strongly request that those who are already members please get involved in one of our many activities. Although our name reflects our roots in the women's suffrage movement, we welcome members and volunteers of all genders. To join, please visit our website, lwvlm.org. And if you'd like to get involved with our activities, please reach out to me here this evening or email me at alicepernick@gmail.com. When you support our local league, you're also supporting the county, state, and national leagues of which we're a part, and all of which work to protect and promote the rights of voters to participate in this most fundamental act of democracy. We'll soon begin this debate. This year, in addition to league-generated questions, members of the public submitted their suggestions for questions for the candidates in advance. And additionally, those in attendance tonight have submitted some suggestions to our league members. And we thank those who took the time to submit their suggestions. We regret we may not be able to ask them all. We regret, and we hope that we can get to them all, but if you don't hear your question asked, it might be because we combined questions on the same topics, or we had time constraints, or non-conformance with our nonpartisan policy. Before we begin, I want to thank LMC Media back there for their live broadcast, and the town of Mamaroneck for the use of the town center. Thanks also to Diana Barry, who will be serving as our timekeeper tonight. And finally, I want to extend our welcome and our thanks to tonight's moderator, Alice McNamara. Ms. McNamara has been a member of the League of Women Voters for 25 years. She's currently a resident of Sleepy Hollow and a vice president of the League of Women Voters of the Rivertowns. She has served as timekeeper and moderator for league candidate forums for 20 years. And we are pleased to have her with us tonight. And I now turn the debates over to Ms. McNamara.
Thank you very much, and many thanks to the League of Women Voters of Larchmont, Mamaroneck for inviting me to moderate this forum. At this time, please silence cell phones and all devices. Please hold all applause and comments until the end of each section of the forum. And I have a few other housekeeping details to go over. Only the videographer authorized by the League may record this event. Any authorized use of the recording requires the advance approval of the League of Women Voters. Only licensed media, including TV, radios, and newspapers, are entitled by FCC regulations to air portions of this recording. Anyone else who broadcasts or streams this recording must do so in its entirety. This is to ensure that the content of the event is not manipulated in any way to create false or misleading impressions. This forum is being broadcast live on LMC-TV. Between now and Election Day, it will be shown on LMC-TV. It will also be available on demand at their website, as well as on the website of the League of Women Voters of Larchmont, Mamaroneck. The candidates have drawn lots to determine who will answer each question first. They will rotate the questions. Each candidate is allowed a 1.5-minute opening statement. They are allowed 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and questions will be followed by a 1.5-minute closing statement. And the time limits will be enforced by our timekeeper. The candidates will address questions and issues. They will not engage in any personal comments or attacks. If a candidate violates these restrictions, I reserve the right to grant their opponent a 30-second rebuttal. The candidates have not been furnished with the questions in advance. So we will begin with the candidates for the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, Tom Murphy and Sharon Torres, and the first opening statement will begin with Ms. Torres.
Thank you. Thank you to the League, LMC, and all of the neighbors who showed up here tonight. My name is Sharon Torres, and I am running for the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck on the Building Bridges line, and I am also endorsed by the Democratic Party. My MBA is from Pace University, and professionally, I'm a Chief Human Resources Officer for a social services agency with more than triple the staff and double the budget of the village. Outside of work, I'm a member of the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission, a volunteer at the food pantry, and the board president for Evelyn Court. When you vote on November 7th, I hope your vote comes down to leadership and experience. My opponent has 6 years' experience as our mayor. My experience includes 20 years of budgeting and negotiating contracts, 12 years as a board president, 6 years of working with city, state, and federal contracts, and 20 years of working collaboratively with others, even when they have different opinions. In our village, we are severely lacking in transparency, basic respect, and strong fiscal controls. We are watching our quality of life deteriorate while overdevelopment continues and lack of maintenance of our infrastructure is allowed. I urge you to look at the last 2 years and decide if this is what you deserve. This is our village, and our priorities need to change. As mayor, I will listen to the community, bring transparency and respect to our communications, and do everything in my power to reduce the impact of flooding in our village.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. I came to Mamaroneck in 1990. I've raised my 3 children here, and now my grandchildren are third-generation Mamaroneck residents. It has been a privilege to serve Mamaroneck in many capacities. I was first a Recreation Board member, then chair of CZM, village trustee, and then Town of Mamaroneck councilman, and now it's been my privilege these last 6 years to serve as mayor. These positions have given me the knowledge and experience to lead Mamaroneck for the next 2 years. In my tenure as mayor, the village has made huge strides forward. We have made our streets safer for pedestrians, enacted a comprehensive plan to control development in the future. We have stayed under the tax cap for 6 years while growing the village surplus by 60%. The village has never been in better financial health. I fought tooth and nail to revive the Army Corps of Engineers flood plan that was killed by the Trump administration. That plan is the cornerstone of parallel flood mitigation, and it gives us reason to hope for the future. In the past 6 years, we have also invested in our long-neglected infrastructure, specifically our sanitary and storm sewers. We have also renovated parks, and finally, after 20 years of waiting, we have built a dog park. Tonight, I hope we can discuss these issues that matter to our residents. And thank you to everyone for coming out tonight.
Okay, thank you. And the first question will go first to Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
There is a discussion about the best way to proceed with the dam at the Westchester Joint Waterworks, which has failed its New York State inspection. There is a discussion, is that better? Okay, thank you. There is a discussion about the best way to proceed with the dam at the Westchester Joint Waterworks, which has failed its New York State inspection. Are you in favor of repairing the dam or removing the dam? What are the flood impacts on the areas immediately downstream if you remove the dam?
You know, if we remove the dam, there will be a slight increase in flooding during 1 to 2 year storms. I'm not in favor of removing the dam. I think we should repair the dam and keep that flood protection going forward. You know, we've done a lot of work in the last 2 years, especially in our rivers. We've dredged a lot of areas. We've removed a lot of silt. We've removed a lot of debris. We've removed a lot of impediments. And we've seen the improvement. We've seen the improvement in the last storm that we had in the village of Mamaroneck, which was almost as severe as Ida, but the flooding was much less severe. And that was partially the work that we did and partially the advocacy of the community. We have to keep working to make sure we can do what we can do here in the village of Mamaroneck, and we've been doing that. And we also have to make sure that the Army Corps of Engineers plan is implemented and is supported. You know, there's a lot of people in this community who don't support the plan, who have been denigrating the plan for years, and who, if allowed to, will not follow through on the plan. And we need to have that. It's the cornerstone of what we need to make this a flood-resilient community, and I will make sure that it happens. And I've worked hard with the various levels of government, from Senator Schumer on down, to make sure it happens. You know, when the Ida flood happened, I was the first out of the bat advocating to restore the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are many ways to look at this, whether we completely replace, repair, or drain all of the water out and just get rid of the dam completely. The dam was supposed to be maintained by us. That's part of our contract. There are pieces of that we have not done. And although it doesn't mitigate a lot right now, it still does mitigate. And so I would need to look at further reports, but right now, I think repairing the dam is the best way for us to go. We should also encourage the county to make sure that we have enough space to contain as much water as possible behind it, meaning cleaning out some of the debris that's there. And we want to make sure that we can release that water before a storm is coming and not just have it pile up. Now, when we talk about the ACE plan, I know that that's been going on for years and everyone's very excited about it. My understanding is that on Friday, that plan was pushed off for a year. And so we can't rely on that right now. We have to look at other measures. Even if it's only pushed off for 6 months or a year, that's still 6 months or a year where we have nothing else helping us. So we still will have to look at other measures, and the dam is definitely one of those measures.
Okay. Thank you. The next question will go first to Ms. Torres. There is a local village referendum which will appear on the ballot that would change the term of office from 2 to 4-year terms for the village mayor and trustee positions and would result in the scheduling of elections for village positions in even-numbered years only after an initial phase-in period. Do you support or oppose this measure, and why?
Okay. I oppose this measure because I think it takes away all accountability from village politics. It is hard enough to find people to run now. Sometimes we have races that are completely unopposed. I think 4 years would make that much more difficult. And quite honestly, I've heard, campaigns can be extremely grueling, and I know they are. It gets very tiring. But for me, it's been a pleasure. I have met so many people in this community, and I would not have done that if I wasn't running. And when you look at politics, nationally, we are extremely divided. And when you go into a presidential election, a lot of people just want to look right down the line, Democrat, Republican, that's how I'm going to vote, and they may not even pay attention to what's happening locally. We have a lot of local issues that are getting attention now. We have our flooding, we have other issues that would be completely ignored, and we would only elect people based on party. We need to get away from that. The reason that I'm part of the Building Bridges campaign is to bring people together. And I think if we will lose some of that if we go to even-yeared elections. When I look at a problem like flooding, we need help. We need help from the state, the county, and we're not going to get that if we take ourselves out of the year when the county elections are, because they won't need us anymore. If we're going to go to the county and ask for money, we have to also be there and support them when they're looking for their petitions to be signed or looking for any other kind of help. So, thank you.
Okay, just informationally, there's a very good chance that the village of Mamaroneck will be the only community running elections in odd-numbered years. The New York State has passed a law, and the governor's probably going to sign it, that will require both town elections and county elections to be held in even-numbered years. So what might happen is there'll be a totally low turnout in village elections because we'll be the only people on the ballot. There'll be nothing drawing people out. But that's an aside just for informational purposes. When this was brought up, it was brought up because of a couple of young folks from Okra had the idea and they did the research, and there's a couple of them sitting back there tonight. I want to thank you folks for your advocacy. But the idea was to get more people involved, to get more people coming out to vote. If we're having it in the odd-numbered years, we are going to be the only people on the ballot, and I can guarantee you it's going to be a very low turnout. So I'm not really against it or for it. I made sure that it was a referendum. We could have just passed it on the village board. But I made sure that it was a referendum so that you, the voters, would have a chance to make up your minds. And it is, hard to get people to run. I sat in this position as a town councilman doing a 4-year term. And I can tell you one thing, you have more time to, enact something in 4 years than you do in 2 years, and you have more time to learn the job.
Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Murphy, we all know that there is a vermin problem in the village of Mamaroneck. What changes do you recommend be made to alleviate this issue in both the business district and residential areas?
So I didn't hear it begin.
We all know that there is a vermin problem in the village of Mamaroneck.
Yeah.
What changes do you recommend to be made to alleviate this issue in both the business district and residential areas?
Well, what happened after the floods of Ida, there were many properties that were abandoned. And these abandoned properties, people didn't maintain them, people didn't come back to them, and they collected garbage. There was abandoned cars. So that rats were allowed to, not allowed, but given the environment where they could breed and were protected. What we did in the village of Mamaroneck is the village manager declared an emergency. He took extraordinary action so that we could go onto these abandoned properties and that we could eradicate the rat problem and that we could, then build the property owner for the work that we had to do. We are also working with our business owners and with our building owners in the downtown area to not leave their garbage out for an extended period of time, to put their garbage in covered containers. And we've made a lot of progress. And there is, a much less of a problem now than there was a few months ago. And unfortunately, social media likes to spin things, and that's been part of the problem in this campaign. There's been, it's been a campaign run by, a lot of times negativity on Nextdoor, and just unfounded rumors on Nextdoor. One of the rumors was just mentioned by my opponent that the Army Corps of Engineers plan isn't going to start until 2025. That's not true.
Thank you.
So there was an emergency order in July of 2023. Ida was in September of 2021. That's 22 months. I don't know if it's really an emergency at 22 months. I think that's a created emergency. If we are focused on maintenance and we are listening to our neighbors, we wouldn't have gotten to this point. When I attended a neighborhood association meeting, our village manager stated that he received 31 emails and that was a large amount, and that's why he went out there. I wonder why we had to get to 31 emails. We all knew Ida hit. We all knew the sewers were being worked on. We all knew that rats were occurring everywhere in places that we don't traditionally even see them. I believe we need to be much more responsive when our village says that there's a problem. There probably is a problem. I can't live in every single neighborhood, but in your neighborhood, you know what's going on, and we need to listen to you. So being responsive, being much quicker to react, enforcing the code so that we don't end up with the problem of all of these things that we had to address, like the abandoned properties and the cars and the damage, and making sure that we enforce that there are closed receptacles around the village at all the areas, like Mamaroneck Avenue, where there are apartments and restaurants. You have a lot of food, a lot of garbage coming out. We need to enforce our own rules.
Okay, thank you. The next question, Ms. Torres first. How would you, as mayor, promote civil participation and respectful discourse at meetings and ensure that all residents are heard?
Thank you. So in human resources, I have town halls and I have hundreds of employees who are not always exactly happy with what's going on. I make sure that they feel welcome and that they know that their voice is heard. So the first place I would start is with the Board of Trustees. If you want to come speak to the Board of Trustees, you should be able to walk in, have no fear of repercussions, name calling, anything else. You should have your time to speak, and then we move on. It can be civil, and it does start from the top. I think we need to be very clear and transparent in our communications, and right now we're not really doing that. I don't think that flood victims are getting updates in a fashion that really helps them to sleep at night. And so if we do that, we're not going to have the same emotional response. Not that flooding won't affect you emotionally, but you're not going to feel as ignored or frustrated. I think we need to be a lot more positive in not just the BOT, but in our communications with our emails and our committees and staff departments and social media. We can work on our website, make it much more clear and easy to use. And I think we should have meetings maybe quarterly as a town hall where we include department heads and you can speak to people who actually know the answers to your questions, because I don't think as mayor I would know every single answer to every question.
Thank you. You know, civility is of the utmost importance in running a village government. But we need serious debate in this community, not government run by next-door cyberbullying, which is what we've been seeing in the past 8-10 months in this community. You know, when I became mayor, one of my first moves was to make sure that the work sessions of the village of Mamaroneck were open to the public and televised. We are the only community in the area that does that. So this way, you can see exactly how decisions are made. You can see, you know, what, conversations are had to arrive at a decision, how things become put on the regular meeting agenda. No other community in the area does that. And that was the first thing that I did. I send out constant emails, probably averaging about 2 a week, informing people about what's going on in this community. We have a newsletter that comes out every Friday that lists all the village meetings, all the village events. That's something that happened in the last few years that we didn't have before. We have done so much to make this community open, and it has really, you know, I get complimented on it by people that the communication is much better than it ever was before. During the flood, we had communication all the time about what was going on, where help was available, how to access help, and, you know, where flooding was occurring. You know, we work really hard at this, and it's really important because our residents deserve it.
Thank you.
But, you know, the idea that, you know, everything is wrong and
Thank
everything
you.
is bad is perpetuated on social media.
Thank you. The next question first to Mr. Murphy. Freedom of Information Law and Open Meetings Law together are known as the Sunshine Laws and were enacted to protect the public's right to know. If elected, how will you ensure that the Sunshine Laws live up to their intended goals?
Thank you. You know, we in the village of Mamaroneck get more FOIL requests than any community in the area combined. And it's really all because of one man, Mr. Tiekert, who averages about 700 FOILs a year. And those FOILs cost all of you time, all of you money. It costs hundreds of hours of our residents, not our residents, of all workers to fulfill those. Since I've become mayor, Mr. Tiekert has sent emails that have been opened by 30,000 times by Village of Mamaroneck employees. So, you know, we have people who are clogging the system for the sake of clogging the system. We have a lawyer who works full-time on these FOIL requests. A lot of them have to be redacted. A lot of them have to be reviewed. This is a lot of time and a lot of energy. And I believe that the end result is to try and throw sand into the gears and to, you know, distract us from things that we really should be doing. You know, we want to get things done in this community. We want to make progress. And there are people who constantly throw sand in the gears because they don't want to see anything happen. They don't want to see anything positive go on in this community. They want to see the status quo. So we've made a lot of progress. And when you have progress, there's always pushback. And there's been a lot of pushback. And I'm proud of that because that wouldn't have been happening if it was just the status quo. There's been change, and the change has been positive.
Thank you.
So, yes, yes, I would make sure that we are following those laws. I think they are immensely important in a democracy. We have to have the ability to see how our government works, and we need access to public documents. That's why Freedom of Information Act came about, so that you could access those documents. And I think a very easy way to, you know, take the sand out of the gears is to make public information public. We have a website. We need to be able to use it for more than just listing our boards and how to contact people or have special events. We could put out the most requested information, which is public and should be sent out on the website. If we do that, we reduce an immense amount of FOIL requests. We save time from the staff. We're compliant with the law. It seems like a win-win to me. It also creates a more transparent government so that nobody feels like you're trying to keep information from them. And I think that goes back to the civility. You engender respect when you give respect. And blaming one particular person doesn't really seem appropriate because the information should be available. And we have the right if we want to do a FOIL request. I did put in my own FOIL requests. I put a similar one into the county. I got a response from the county within just a few days. I got put off for 4 months from our village. I don't know if it was, the particular request. I know what I put in, and it was very simple. If everyone else is seeing that, I can understand the stress that's involved.
Thank you. Okay. And next question, Ms. Torres. If you are elected/re-elected mayor, can we count on you to hire someone to be on the village staff that will be dedicated to all things flood-related? For example, flood mitigation research, community communication, grant research, meeting with the ACE engineer, et cetera.
The short answer is yes. I have that all of my material. Oh, sorry. The short answer is yes. We have that on all of our materials, on our website, our flyers, our mailers, and I can't take credit for this. I attended a flood mitigation advisory committee meeting, and there was so much good information that I got from them, which is why I believe we need to listen to our village. We have volunteers, we have neighbors who are extremely interested and have different skill sets that I may not have. We learned back in June and then again in September that the county could have potentially had up to $5 million available to help us. We did not put in very many requests. We put in a request for about $150,000. I believe if we had somebody focused, we could increase the communication back and forth between the village government and the residents who are flooding. We could be very proactive with the flooding and make sure people are prepared and see if they need help. We could have that person look for a multi-jurisdictional committee and build relationships with the other municipalities who gain nothing unless we're working together, and we can get bigger grants, which are available when you work together. There's power in numbers, and I think having someone really focused on that is going to make us move faster as opposed to sort of sitting where we are right now.
Hi. Yes, I actually sent out an email about this morning, and I was talking to the village manager, and we're looking to hire somebody in the engineering department to handle just flooding. And the problem is we have to get the we have to get the position approved by the county HR department. So they have been working on that for a while, and that will come to fruition. It's the thing about flooding is you have to constantly be on it. You have to constantly be advocating for it. We have been doing that. When Ida hit, I got on MSNBC, I got on CNN, I got on NBC News the morning after the flood, and I was railing about the fact that the Army Corps of Engineer plan was killed by the Trump administration. And I got a call 15 minutes later from Governor Schumer's office. And Governor Schumer assured me that something was going to happen and that we were going to be making progress. And it did happen. And I'm very happy to work with Governor Schumer and Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand and Steve Otis and Shelley Mayer. We've all worked together to make this community more flood resilient and to give us hope for the future. That $5 million you talked about was for the whole county. It wasn't something that Catherine had for herself, for us. And we're accessing it. We have talked to Catherine about that.
Okay.
And to say
you.
that we didn't is not true.
Okay, thank you. Next question. First, Mr. Murphy. How would you work to keep taxes under control in the next 2 years?
Okay. We have kept taxes under the tax cap for 6 years in a row. The percentage of village budget that's funded by your real estate tax has fallen in the past few years. We've gotten more money from raising fees and from selling services that the village has. We've done a lot of work in-house. We have a very talented staff, and we've allowed that staff to do what they can do. The building department, the parks department especially, has started doing almost all their work in-house. They are very innovative, and it's amazing when you put people in positions to succeed and you give them the opportunity. They do, because we have employees who love this community. We have employees who live here and who really care about this place. And when they are given the opportunity to show how much they care and to show how much they can do, they've been really excelling at it. So we've done an excellent job of keeping property taxes down. Like I said before, we have grown the surplus by 60% in the last 6 years. And that is pretty incredible. When other communities were taking millions and millions of dollars out of their surplus to balance their budget, we're adding money to the surplus every year. And that makes us, and when we have floods and we have emergencies,
Thank you.
we have a cushion.
Thank you.
So a 60% surplus sounds really high to me. I haven't seen those numbers. And if we had that much money, I have to wonder about the fees being raised and the taxes. And it's true, the tax cap was kept for years. It's also true, if you remember all through during COVID, that the price of houses went up, which means the appraisals went up, which means even if you're only paying 2%, but it's of a higher dollar amount, you could get as much as a 30% increase. And I know neighbors who have had 10, 15, 20% increases just because the old assessments are very different from the new assessments. And I think we need to be clear about that. In the next 2 years, we also need to watch our bonding. So in the past few years, we've been bonding on an average, give or take, maybe $7 million a year. And some of that money does come back to us, depending on the work that we're doing. We have lots of projects that we want to get done, but we still have to make sure that it's not like using our credit card and maxing it out and having all that interest. We are at very high interest rates right now, so I would be very careful about bonding because you're looking at your future before you pay for it. I also think we have to be really smart with budgeting. We got FEMA money. We did get money off of Ida, and that was a cushion, but hopefully we never see that again. So I would want to ensure that we're creating a respectful budget, that we stick to the budget, that if something comes up, we trade off, we don't just add to the budget. Just like if you're at home and you have a leak in your roof and you want a new car, you have to make a choice.
Thank you. Okay, and next question to Ms. Torres first. Several Westchester municipalities have enacted accessory dwelling unit legislation allowing a second dwelling unit on the property of an existing home in a single-family zone. What is your opinion on the use of accessory dwelling units as an option to expand the stock of affordable housing in the village?
Sure. So I think when we look at our village, it's diverse. We have properties in different zones, different sizes, different lot sizes, so I don't know that it would work for every single person, but I also know that as jobs have increased and people have moved around, we have a lot of people who need housing. And we also need it to be affordable, because not everyone is going to be in the highest tiers, and we want diversity in our community. We want to have socioeconomic diversity in addition to other types of diversity. And so I would need to read the legislation and make sure it fit us, because I think sometimes we have unintended consequences when we don't do that. But the idea of allowing someone who has the amount of property to expand, which would increase the value of the home and raise the taxes, and also create additional living space, I would be open to looking at that.
I am only open to accessory dwelling unit, ADUs, if we can ensure that they are marketed to affordability for people who really need homes and starters. If we don't, what we're going to have is we're just going to have kind of luxury apartments that people are going to rent out, and all we're going to do is overcrowd single-family districts. And those single-family districts, so if you're if you bought a single-family home, we allow ADU, and there's going to be 2 families next to you on this side, 2 families next to you on that side. And that's not what you bought when you bought that single-family home. We've had a lot of problems with people, putting in illegal apartments in single-family zones, and we've worked on eradicating that, and it's very difficult. So I would only be open to it if there was a guarantee that it would be marketed to people who needed affordable housing. I'm not a big proponent of just build more housing and the cost of housing will go down because there'll be a glut of housing. That's never worked. I grew up in New York City, and that was supposed to be, the gentrification was supposed to solve housing problems because building all this new luxury housing would open up, more middle-class housing, and it never happened. They just keep building more luxury, and the middle class and the working people get forced out. So I am not in favor of doing that unless I know that it's going to definitely maintain the diversity of this community and the people who grew up here, who built this community, who work here, our firemen, our police, our sanitation, our workers.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Murphy first. What measures should Mamaroneck take, if any, to reach the New York State Climate Act's greenhouse reduction goals?
Well, thanks for asking that. What we have been doing, and at the last Board of Trustees meeting, we agreed to purchase a number of electrical vehicles. We have done that. We will keep doing that. We are talking about we have replaced all of our street lights with energy-saving lights. We have done that at our biggest light user at Harbor Island Field. And this has saved us. We went from incandescent bulbs to the energy-saving light-emitting diodes, LEDs, and it's cut down significantly what we pay to light that field during the games that people enjoy in Harbor Island Park. So we're working at it. We have to reduce our carbon footprint. Everybody has to reduce our carbon footprint. We've more than doubled the amount of money since I've been in office that is spent buying trees in this community. And that's one of the ways you lower your carbon footprint. The more trees you have that could absorb carbon. We're losing trees because of the age of the community. Trees that were planted 80 years ago are now moving on, and we have to keep replenishing them. And we have an excellent tree committee, and they are doing a great job both maintaining our trees and also giving us new ones. And we passed a stringent tree law, which is, the envy of a lot of communities, and we're making progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. When I think of carbon footprint, I think of what naturally takes up carbon, and that's trees. And we have been planting trees. I can't take that away from the village. I think our tree committee has done a fantastic job. What I do see are older trees that are still in good shape being taken down, and that affects flooding because the root system is no longer there, and so some properties are now flooding that never flooded before. I think we need to put something in place for new developments as well. We just had come before the Harbor Coastal Zone Committee a property that was a 2-family house that that's moving into a 6-family house, and everything on that property is being taken down. Over 90% of the property will be this impervious structure. They followed every rule. They are compliant, and there's no reason to stop the development except they're removing every single tree on the property, and there will be almost no green space. So I think when we look at flooding, we need to make sure that we're including green space. I think when we're looking at development, we have to add something for green space. And I also think when we look at the electric vehicles, let's make them more open to the public. Not everyone can afford it to have it at home, but if we can get people moving towards those green vehicles, we need to also give them spaces to charge up when they come into the village, hoping that we're bringing people in, and it's not just for the people who live here.
Okay. Other than flooding, what are the 2 most important issues facing the village of Mamaroneck? Ms. Torres.
Okay. 2 of the most, I think flooding is absolutely 1, 2, and 3. After that, I really believe that the divisiveness in this community is toxic. And I know it's not starting from our neighbors. It started much bigger than us. But we're getting to a point where whether it's social media, it's emails from somebody, talking at a Board of Trustees meeting. It really keeps us from collaborating. It keeps us from making better decisions. And we really need to work on that. So we need to work on the divisiveness. We need to be much more transparent, and we need to show respect for people. And I do believe that is extremely important. I also think we need to hold the line on spending. This year was not a, robust year for revenue across the country. We have to make sure that we are being very conservative in our spending so that when an emergency happens, we do have the reserve accounts. If we put too much in and we overestimate the revenue, then we're not going to have the money later. And so I think it's very important that we plan, we stick to a budget, we make sure when something happens, we have a trade-off. The same way you would in your own household, we should respect your tax dollars the same way you have to respect your own income.
I would say one of the most important items is pedestrian safety. When you walk and knock on doors and talk to people in this community, they talk about wanting their kids to walk to school, wanting to be able to bike in the community. They talk about the speed of cars going down the streets, and it's a very real concern. And we've worked hard on that. We lowered the speed limit to 25 miles per hour. We have put in speed humps in some area. We're going to put them in other areas. We have done traffic calming measures and measures to allow people easier access to cross the street by doing bump outs. We're going to do all of Halsted Avenue like that. And we've made a lot of progress, and people have seen it and people have commented upon it. I want to talk about the civility thing because, my opponent talks about it, but her campaign is run basically on Nextdoor, but the most uncivil discourse I have ever seen in an election. Name-calling, cyberbullying, ad hominem attacks. There was an attack that my children had to respond to because it involved, things that affected them. And this is just beyond the pale. And those are people that supported you and have been supporting you, and I wish that you would tell them that that is not the way to run a campaign. And to act like you don't see that when I see you like these things is disingenuous.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take my prerogative, and because I have asked the candidates not to address the other candidates in any kind of a personal manner. Ms. Torres, would you like a 30-second rebuttal?
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do not tell everyone how to behave on Nextdoor or any other social media platform. That is not my right. You have the freedom to speak. I am not running my entire campaign on Nextdoor either. And when I do see people that I know who are friends and neighbors who support me, I have asked them to not do some of the things that they've done in the past. And for the most part, I've had a lot of luck with that. I like to work with people and make sure that we're talking to each other, even if we disagree on something, that we can still respect each other. Thank you.
Okay. The next question, first to Mr. Murphy. Are you in favor of changing the zoning for the Hampshire property? Why or why not?
I have been against changing zoning for the Hampshire property since the question first arose when I was on this town board. The reason being, the Hampshire property where the clubhouse is zoned marine recreational. There are two zones in this village for marine. It's marine recreational and marine commercial. The marine commercial are the boatyards. The marine recreational are the clubs. Those have kept us a maritime community. It has allowed us to have a thriving economy based on a small boat harbor. The best small boat harbor you're going to find anywhere is in the village of Mamaroneck. If we lose that, if we lose the clubs and we lose the boatyards, we're going to lose the character of this community. We're going to look like one of those communities, on the shore in Bayside, Queens, with the apartment buildings all up and down the shore. And you're not going to be able to access the waterfront. We're not going to have clubs where people can recreate, where we can hold, charitable events, and to have, some recreation in this community. And it's going to, ruin the view from Harbor Island Park. This is what makes us who we are. So I've been vehemently opposed to this. This will never happen while I'm Village of Mamaroneck mayor. The developer knows this will never happen when I'm Village of Mamaroneck mayor. That is, he knows that. That's why he's tried to use the school system to try and influence our board, and that's why I've been so strong in telling the school system that they made a mistake when they made that deal.
Thank you. Ms. Torres?
So Hampshire is still in litigation and has been for a while, and Hampshire was purchased as a golf club. That's what it's being used as. That's what it should stay as. I have not had any conversations with the developers, so I don't know what their next steps are, but I do know that the zoning board followed all of the rules. They were looking out for our community, and they said no. That did lead to litigation, and I support that litigation because I think we have to protect our community. If we do allow Hampshire to develop, then we're going to lose our ability to control anything on the shoreline. So in this one case, I do agree. The flooding that happens there is will affect Orienta. There are too many apartments going up, will create all kinds of havoc on school zones and traffic and other things. And I think it's really important to remember that this is not an Orienta issue. This is a village issue. Just like the flooding in Washingtonville is a village issue, we need to maintain, we need to hold our line, we need to keep the character of this village, and that means protecting places like Hampshire from development. Because once we do it there, it could happen everywhere, and then we really are going to become a city as opposed to a village.
Okay, and the next question, what should we be doing to upgrade our aging infrastructure? Ms. Torres first.
Okay, thank you. So we have been working on the sewers, and I think that's something that's obviously going to continue. We have a referendum to help allow us to continue to bond to keep that project going. We also have the machinery to do dredging, and I think that we have to include as our infrastructure are the rivers, and so we need to maintain that dredging consistently. So maybe it's a 3-year cycle or something similar, but where we're constantly going in. We also need to make sure that the storm drains are being cleared all of the time, because we never know when we're going to have a rain event, and then we're going to have blockages. We also need to maintain we also need to look at how many storm drains we have, because back in the day, we had a smaller population. The river could probably handle most of the water going into it. We need to find ways to slow down that water so that it's being held and just moving a little bit slower rather than just flowing over everyone's property and going into the rivers directly. And I also think we need to take better care of the properties we own. When we look at Hunter Tier Lot, which is something that they're looking at for affordable housing, whether or not that goes through, if you look at the Hunter Tier Lot, it's in disrepair. It does have to come down. And if we wait too long, it just becomes more and more expensive, like our firehouses. We had expenses to repair years and years ago. They did not go through. Now we have a firehouse that has an extraordinary amount of work, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hi. I just want to correct something before. The Hampshire litigation is not against the zoning board, it's against the planning board, and it's an important distinction. But our infrastructure, we've done a lot of work on our infrastructure in the past few years. We've done the biggest sewer rehabilitation ever. We spent $9 million rehabilitating our sanitary sewers. We've done a lot of work on our storm sewers. We paved more roads in the last few years than we had in the years before. That they weren't paving roads for years before that. They were holding the CHIPS money and not spending it. We have done over parks. We did over Jefferson Avenue Park. We have a plan next year to do over Harbor Island Park from the playground all the way down to the beach, including upgrading the spray ground. We have a plan to also do Florence Park, where the equipment is and where the tennis courts are. These are places that have been neglected for a long time, and they needed to be done. And frankly, things weren't getting done before Lou Young, Leilani Yazzie-Reed, and Manny Rawlings got elected, and we were able to start moving stuff and actually making decisions. Decisions weren't being made. Things were being put off, things were being delayed, things were being talked to death ad nauseum. There was not any progress being made. The progress started happening, substantial progress started happening when those three got elected, and we had an ability to move things forward. Things weren't kept on the agenda for years at a time.
Thank you. And due to our time constraints, this will be our final question. and it would be first to Mr. Murphy. There are several developments in progress in Harrison and White Plains, which will send more stormwater through our already constricted waterways. What would you do as mayor to protect our residents?
Well, when we talked about hiring the flood, I'd like to call him the flood czar, him or her, the flood czar, that would be one of their responsibilities, is to keep track of what other communities are doing and to make sure that what they're sending us is not another flood. What we did recently was an important step. At the last Board of Trustees meeting, we passed a new flood regulation law for buildings, so that if you are putting up a structure, you had to maintain on your property the 100-year flood. That means that the amount of rain that happens once every 100 years is so like a 4 or 5 inch storm. That water had to be maintained on your property. It could not go into the storm sewer. And one of the reasons for doing that, other than it's good for us, is now we can go to other communities and we can say, we did this, you should do this. To be an exemplar of how it should be done, because we can't point to them and tell them how to keep water on their property if we're not keeping it on our property. So I think that was a good first step, and it gives us standing to then go to them and advocate for what they should be doing. Good.
I believe there are two different approaches. One is obviously making sure that we take care of ourselves. The regulations that passed this week were a start. I think it was a little too late. It's been 2 years since IDA. We should have had more done even a year ago. But at least we're starting. And being on the Harbor Coastal Zone Committee, I look at the 100-year flood as the minimum. It's not where we should be looking, because we don't want to have to change regulations every 2 years or every 5 years. We want to plan ahead. And we know that these storms are going to keep coming. So we need to plan for what are those storms going to look like in the next few years, meaning 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead. I also think that we need a multi-jurisdictional approach. So as mayor, I would want to make sure that we have that one person who is coordinating and developing relationships with these other municipalities. If we just tell them what to do or talk to them, there's nothing for them to gain. But if we work together, we can come up with regulations that maybe fit multiple jurisdictions and can create a safer space for all of us, and also look for more money to make sure that we are addressing the water, which starts in other places and always finds its way to Mamaroneck. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now the candidates will deliver their closing statements. Ms. Torres will deliver her 1.5-minute closing statement first, followed by Mr. Murphy.
Okay. Tonight we discussed a number of issues that are really important to this community. I decided to run for mayor because I truly love this village, and I think we deserve better. Over the last few years, I've seen changes that are disturbing to me. The extreme divisiveness, whether it's at the Board of Trustees meetings, social media, or even blaming between one community and another within the village. There's a lack of respect and transparency by the board and village manager. There's a continued lack of maintenance on our infrastructure. We need to make sure those storm drains are clear all of the time. We need to maintain dredging in the rivers and keep up all of our municipal properties. There's also a lack of both the action against flooding and empathy for those who have been traumatized by the worsening floods that continue to come. As mayor, I will bring back respect and communication with our residents in the boardroom, in written communication and online, collaboration within the community and within our region with other municipalities, transparency and sharing of public information on our website and through emails and announcement, tighter fiscal controls and honest explanations of decisions that have been made, a hyper-focused approach to mitigating the damage to our village and the harm caused to our neighbors from flooding. Thank you all. Please remember that early voting starts on Saturday and Election Day is November 7th.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to be your mayor these past 6 years. It's been one of the most rewarding jobs I ever had, to get to know this community, to love this community, to care about the people in this community, and to make lifelong relationships that I've made over the past 20-something years. Being mayor is not an entry-level position. It is a position that requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of connections, a lot of skill, and frankly, leadership. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And sometimes those tough decisions alienate people who were your political supporters before. But you have to make decisions that benefit the community. It's about what's best for the people of Mamaroneck, not what's best for some people who have an axe to grind or have a political stake in things. And I've done that. I've done it consistently. That has alienated me from the Village of Mamaroneck local party. I am the Democratic candidate. I'm supported by everybody from Chuck Schumer down to Jane Elkanini, and I'm proud of that. But I will not make decisions that benefit a small group of people and hurt the rest of this community. And I've defended the village when we were being sued, and I will continue to defend the village when we are being sued. And it's important that you have a mayor who sticks up for you and isn't influenced by those who have their own agenda. And I have proven that time and time again, and I'm proud of the work I've done in the Village of Mamaroneck, and I hope to ask for your vote on June 7th. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a brief break while we set up for the next portion of the forum, and thank you to the candidates.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
Nice job.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for sticking around for the second part of our forum, which is the candidates for the Mamaroneck Village Trustee. We drew lots, and in the drawing of lots, the first candidate to speak will be Mallory Chin, followed by Nora Lucas. And so we're ready to begin with opening statements.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Mallory Chin, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. I'd also like to thank all of you for coming out to engage in this important discussion. Mamaroneck needs elected officials who will stand up for working families. I'm a 26-year veteran middle school social studies teacher and the building representative and political action coordinator for my teachers union. Working with my students and colleagues has taught me to see issues from multiple perspectives, elevate voices that may not be the loudest in the room, and think deeply about social justice and how to respond to difficult questions. I'm not afraid to sit down with people who may disagree with me, and I'm comfortable having courageous conversations. I'm also a lifelong resident at Mamaroneck High School and New York University graduate, and the parent of 3 children who have gone through the Mamaroneck school system, one still in 8th grade at Homix. My husband has been teaching music at Mamaroneck Avenue School for 32 years. I'm clearly an accountable stakeholder in our schools and in our community. But I've seen this community at its best, and I've seen it at its worst. I know that we need progress now, not paralysis. We need leaders who are going to be on the front lines of implementing the Army Corps plan and parallel flood mitigation action. We need leaders who are boots-on-the-ground workers, who roll their sleeves up to volunteer and help their neighbors. We need visionaries who will think outside the box and brainstorm every possible solution to mitigate flooding, create green spaces, revitalize our industrial zone, hold the line on overdevelopment, and collaborate with village employees to complete projects that help our village. What we need now is forward-thinking, progressive, and an ambitious approach to put working families back in control in Mamaroneck. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Nora Lucas. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and all of you for attending, and LMC Media for recording. It's nice that it's back in person. It's been remote for a little too long. When I first ran 6 years ago, I compared this forum to a job interview. I was being judged on my qualifications and my likely future performance as your trustee, but now, 6 years later, I think it's a performance review. Voters know more about me and my service as trustee. As I have campaigned, I've been told by voters, whether they agree with me or not, on the issues. They think I listen and I'm doing a good job. I strive to find common ground and encourage collaboration, and I will work with all residents for a better outcome for the village. My training as a professional researcher has helped me tremendously in commanding the facts I needed to be a trustee. I've developed relationships with elected officials in county, state, and federal government, which are critical to achieve regional solutions to the issues that we face, which include flooding and water quality. But we have much else to work on. We must improve communications with residents. We need to control overdevelopment. We need to assure that budget controls and long-term planning protect the fiscal health of the village. We need to mind your taxes, and we need to guarantee that board meetings are a safe space for residents, which they are not now. I'm committed to serving the village and its residents. I urge you to vote for me and Sharon on September 7th or during early voting, which begins this Saturday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the first question will go first to Ms. Lucas. What, in your opinion, should be done with regard to the aging building that houses Village Hall? If repairs or replacement are called for, how would you finance such a project?
Oh, that is a very good question. So the building that is Village Hall is, which now houses the police station and many offices, is slated to be repaired. In addition to which we have explored and are exploring and have a facility study out to build a new police station, a modern police station on sort of the site of the courthouse using that whole complex, and to rehabilitate Village Hall. There was much debate about this, and I was poo-pooed as wanting to save an old building. And I said, well, I think we should explore saving an old building. It turns out that it's substantially less expensive per square foot to rehab the existing building and build a new building for a small portion of our space. So I think that's probably the best option we have. We have many, many buildings that are scattered all over the village. At least with this regard, we can have a modern, safe police facility. We'll have more flexible space for Village Hall and be able to move out of the regatta so to consolidate some of the offices. But it turns out in this case, rehabilitating that building is the most cost-effective for the village.
Thank you. That building is actually right across the street from my house, so I definitely have skin in the game with this one. I'm interested in carrying out the village's 5-year capital improvement plan, and I actually saw the night of our last big rain event. I was working at the shelter that was set up in the courthouse, and we had about 5 families there. We had a busload of school children, and myself and one other, a village employee, I'm not saying I'm a village employee, we're talking about the need to be more prepared for these situations for any type of natural disaster emergency. So I would definitely want to repair the building that's there and make it workable, but I think we also need to include spaces, which I think is part of our plan moving forward, but we do need spaces to help families if they need a place to stay, if there's a natural disaster. My husband had to go out and buy diapers for one of the families. Like, these are things that we could have had in some kind of storage closet, and we really needed access to supplies. Leilani ran down to the church and got clothing, and I think that incorporated into revitalizing this building, we can also imagine other community spaces that can support people in times of need.
Okay, thank you. And the next question first to Ms. Chin. What are your views on affordable housing in the village of Mamaroneck?
Thank you. I am a supporter of housing affordability in the village of Mamaroneck. I've lived here my entire life, and I know many families that are multi-generational families as well, and that's something I love about Mamaroneck, that when you meet somebody, it's very likely that their grandparents live here, or that their great-grandparents live here. I just was able to speak to the IABC, and there are also a lot of multi-generational buildings here, and I know that if we don't provide housing affordability at a range of incomes, that we're going to lose that really special character of Mamaroneck that is home to so many different generations. So I'm absolutely in support of affordable housing. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in support of affordable housing. I've worked in the field for many years because it's a big portion of historic preservation. It's often it's a great use to adapt in a church or a large structure or many kinds of buildings for affordable housing. And I work on a lot of those projects professionally. I think in the village of Mamaroneck, we definitely need more affordable housing because we need to have a wide range of housing. And I think there's a big misconception in the world or in the United States that affordable housing is low-income housing, and it's not. It's a housing that's affordable for you at whatever your income level is. And we are fast approaching a community that's of the very wealthy and the very poor, and the middle class is getting squeezed out. And in fact, I had proposed, which I thought would be a no-brainer, an affordable housing task force in our community so that we would work. It's required in the state of Connecticut. I think it should be required in New York State. And many of the river towns have successfully created a committee of stakeholders to think about how we can get affordable housing throughout the community, and I was the only trustee who supported that. I was very sad to see that my fellow board members did not think that was a priority. You know, I think affordable housing is the key to our future because we need to have room for everybody in the community.
Okay, thank you. Next question. There is a local village referendum which will appear on the ballot that would change the term of office from 2 to 4-year terms for the village mayor and trustee positions and would result in the scheduling of elections for village positions in even-numbered years only after an initial phase-in period. Do you support or oppose this measure, and why?
Thank you. I oppose this measure. I actually worked with the students on it, and I oppose it for a variety of reasons. One, I think that we do want to keep aligned with the county elections. Mayor Murphy was incorrect when he talked about the law that has been passed by the state legislature, but not yet signed by the governor. It affects towns. It would move town elections to even years, but it does not move the county elections to even years. So I think it's very important to be in sync with the county. We had there's a big change in the Army Corps plan, and there's more funding that's needed, and we really need the county as our partner. They came through this week. They are willing to help us fund an interim step because the Army Corps is delaying the plan. We are trying to figure out how that funding works, but we need the county on our side. I'm also opposed to it because I think 4-year terms will insulate the Board of Trustees from the voters. I think a lot gets done right before an election, which means maybe a lot might get done every 4 years. There was a huge outcry in February. People were very opposed to the Board of Trustees simply adopting a law that would change it to 4-year terms on even years, and the board was prepared to do it, and the only reason it didn't happen was because there was great public outcry at a meeting. So I think we need to be more accountable, and well, personally, it would be great to not campaign every 2 years. I think it's what we need to be doing. Thanks.
I support the referendum. It's student initiated. My daughter actually went to Mamaroneck High School and was one of Mr. Liberti's students, and that got me really excited about it when I first heard about it. But what I've learned entering this sphere of local politics is our time is really valuable. And I've been out every night the past few weeks at different campaign events, and I would love to use my time to support my county legislators. I could absolutely do that, but if we're running campaigns every year, I think that we're wasting really precious time that could be used to enact change, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. I also think it's wasting people's money. My community members were so generous in funding my campaign, and I can't imagine having the option to ask them for that once a year or every 4 years. I'm just going to ask that's quiet in the audience, please. I'm sorry, it's distracting when people are whispering. So I think that it's an important referendum, and it definitely gives trustees time to enact change, see changes go through, and it's being judicious with our time and our energy, which is really a valuable resource.
Okay, thank you. And the next question. What do you propose we do to mitigate flooding now, in addition to the Army Corps of Engineers plan?
Thanks. I think this is a multi-tier approach. I know that we are working on an early warning system, and I know that there's debate about that. I think that we need to look more closely at an early warning system and community preparedness. And then we just passed the legislation last night about the stormwater management. I'm on the planning board that actually came before us for review, and we were excited about different aspects of it. I'm curious about learning more about blue roof structures as a requirement for new building. I think we should be considering that. And enacting flood-resilient infrastructure and building codes, and looking at sustainable coastal ecosystem management, where a lot of our, where we encounter a lot of our water.
Thank you. I think flooding is an existential threat to the village, and it's one of it's the #1 issue for many, many people. And I think it's important to the entire village, because even if you don't flood, it uses so many of our resources, it affects everybody. And I was shocked to find out that the Army Corps plan was being delayed. There was a meeting on Friday where some trustees attended and the village manager attended. The village manager made a report on Monday, did not talk about this, and it was announced at the Flood Mitigation Committee meeting last night. If I were to be, I think that I was on the Flood Mitigation Committee before I was a trustee, and I think it's essential that the village manager be attending these meetings. Staff always did when I was on it. That's not happening now. I think the Flood Mitigation Committee has to be heard. Their priorities are not being brought to the Board of Trustees. I think that we need to have somebody who is going to be in charge of flooding, that's their portfolio. And while it's great that the mayor suggested that we're hiring somebody, we actually haven't put it in the budget. And that's one of the requirements. You have to have a position funded in the budget before you can hire someone. And I think that we need to be transparent about what we're doing about flooding and communicate it. And this was a big fail this week. The Army Corps is not going to be here as soon as people thought, and that's heartbreaking to people who are counting on that plan.
Okay, thank you. And the next question. Are you in favor of changing the zoning for the Hampshire property? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. I think we're probably all going to be aligned on this. I actually worked on the rewrite of the LWRP. I'm very familiar with our Harbor and Coastal Zone Management Commission rules. The marine zones are essential to maintaining the character of our community. If one area, specifically Hampshire, is rezoned, that's really like a tumbling block for all of the rest of the marine zones. And I also think that one of the concerns that people have expressed is the overdevelopment in the village, and that it's hard to get around. There's too much traffic. There are too many people in the schools. And I think that by developing Hampshire and rezoning Hampshire, we're simply opening up the door to too much development and for a community that just can't sustain much more development. So no rezoning of Hampshire.
Thanks. I would agree with Nora on this one. I am against the rezoning of Hampshire. When I was a student at Mamaroneck High School 30 years ago, I watched on TV as my classmate tried to rescue a driver during a flood. So that area is very much prone to flooding. I don't really understand what the vision is that the school district has in using that land. But I think that we definitely need to maintain the charm of our village. We have a little sailboat down on the harbor. It's a huge part of our life. And we definitely want the waterfront to look as it looks now, 20, 30 years from now, moving forward.
Okay, thank you. How can we make the village a more vibrant destination for both artists and those wanting to experience the arts?
Thanks. One project that I'm really excited about would be the revitalization of our industrial section. It makes up 25% of our tax base now. And my husband's a musician, and we've been excited about shared workspaces, performance spaces, and I have a vision of making that area walkable and connected to the downtown of Mamaroneck Village. I've talked a little bit before about having a shuttle that would connect different parts of our community, and I think that if we work on beautifying that community and make it more welcoming as you come off 95, we can make that a destination for the arts. We can make that a destination for musicians, and perhaps add more of a nightlife component there. I'd also like to see more green space there to mitigate flooding, and I think it could also be an area where we look at some housing affordability projects.
Thanks. I think the industrial area is, the zoning has been on hold since the moratorium, since the pandemic. In February of 2020, there was a test sample of 6 or 7 sites to see if the proposed zoning was viable, and many recommendations were made. And I think one of the things we really need to do is get back on track and rezone the industrial area, because the industrial area, as the rest of the village, was zoned in 1968, and we haven't modified our zoning code since 1968, which means it's very hard to open a performance space or open an artist space because it doesn't comply with the codes. And you always have to balance, what kinds of uses are appropriate in residential areas or non-residential areas. So I think we have a real opportunity to make the industrial area, which is very busy during the day but very calm at night, a place where people can come and meet and gather and enjoy. So I'm hoping that we'll get back on track with revitalizing the industrial area and changing that zoning.
Okay, thank you. Currently, the use of any kind of leaf blower is banned in the village of Mamaroneck from May 15th through September 30th because of health and environmental concerns. Do you support extending the ban on leaf blowers all year? Why or why not?
I'm not sure I would suppose extending. This has been a big topic of conversation at the Board of Trustees, and we just passed a law requiring gas-powered leaf blowers, but we did not modify the time frame at which they can be used. And I think I put it back on the agenda, and I think other trustees agree with me, and I think this will be the discussion in 3 weeks, that we will severely limit the amount of time that it can be used to just a fall cleanup and a spring cleanup, and that we will make the penalties more equitable so that there's a disincentive for not just the people who are using it, but for homeowners and for landscapers to also be more temperate with them. But I don't think that I don't think, based on the testimony that we got and the need for some large properties to be able to blow during a certain period of time, that it will be all year. I think it will be for a limited period of time in the fall and the spring. That was what I would recommend.
I think noise pollution is definitely an issue. I know that in the rare moment I have just to relax, if a landscaper or a neighbor is using a really loud leaf blower, it can be disturbing. But I would want to also speak to landscaping companies and hear from them exactly what their needs are. I can imagine that there's a robust need at certain times of the year, and I wouldn't want to disproportionately punish them for something that needs to be part of their business. So I think that we should move to electric leaf blowers so that we're not putting out so much pollution, but I'd want to hear more from people who it would actually affect, in addition to homeowners, to be able to make a really important, detailed decision about that.
Thank you. What ideas do you have for raising additional revenue in the village of Mamaroneck?
Right now, our budget is mainly made up of salaries, benefits, utilities, and over time, some costs will be reduced by way of attrition of village employees. But we could also reduce spending by modernizing our facilities and using energy-efficient designs that could cut costs and maintain a leaner budget. I think that we should continue to pursue alternative revenue streams. I know we've been talking a lot about solar panels, and that's another way that we could keep our costs down.
That's been a very big topic of conversation during budget season, and this year, instead of raising taxes, we raised revenue projections, and they have not come to fruition. So I think that's going to come back to bite us at the end of this fiscal year. We were unrealistic in our budget non-property tax revenue, and I think that will come out of there will be money coming out of the reserve fund to cover those losses. But what really concerns me is that we have about $35 million that we've bonded in the last 5 years, and we don't have a capital budget. We haven't adopted a capital budget. We've adopted a capital spending plan, which is a 5-year spending plan of over $120 over $100 million, close to $120 million. That is not sustainable. We can't bond $120 million over 5 years if what we've done for the past 5 years is $35 million without increasing property taxes. And a portion of what we've bonded is reimbursements from FEMA. So I'm very concerned about how we are going to continue without raising property taxes, and I think we haven't been great at identifying revenue streams, and we have to be really, really more precise and careful with that.
Okay, thank you. Much of the rest of the country is very divided and polarized. Do you think the village of Mamaroneck is divided? If so, what will you do to bring the community together?
I think that we're probably not as divided as our nation is, but I think we are somewhat divided. I think this campaign, because it's being run in an off-year election, isn't terribly reflective of national politics, which I think is a good thing. And I think people from all areas of the village, all political persuasions of the village have come together because they're frustrated with the lack of civility on the Board of Trustees and the lack of being listened to. And so I think people have put aside partisan differences to try and think about what issues are important to them and important to the village. It's another reason to keep the elections to keep the elections the way they are, which means you don't run every year, you run every 2 years, but the cycles are even years and odd years, not a four-year term that allows you to run village elections every 2 years. You don't run every year, you run every 2 years. And I think that the Building Bridges campaign has actually made inroads into having people who completely don't agree with one another find common ground, and I very much appreciate that.
As a teacher, I'm used to interacting with hundreds of people a day, and I truly love all of my students, and trust me, they come with all different types of personalities. So I think that we're all very similar at the end of the day, and we all have a lot of the same needs and wants. But I did learn coming into local politics that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and that supporters of opposing sides are also working behind the scenes. Like, for example, I've been sued, and I'm a school teacher. I had to go to court one day after work, and I thought it was pretty cool because I'd never been to court before. But if that's like kind of how we function here, it's not really that cool, and I can see why so many people choose not to run. I think that if we can come together in ways that we build community, that we can do better. I think that we need to sit in a circle and face each other. People have attacked me on social media. I don't even know who they are. I think they use fake names. I've offered to meet them for coffee or meet them for tea. And when people have taken me up on it, we've had some really amazing conversations. But I think we just need to keep moving forward as a community, lead with love, and really try to get to know each other. And try to get more people involved in local politics. It's been really fun. It's been really hard, but it's also been really fun. And I look forward to leading the community in that direction.
Okay, thank you. And this will be our final question for this evening. And Ms. Chin first.
Yes.
Other than flooding, what are the two most important issues facing the village of Mamaroneck?
My son rides his bike to school every day, and it terrifies me. So especially, I think in the last 6 to 12 months, we've had several pedestrians, most children, who have been part of car accidents. So I would like to see a major action taken in the village to make our streets safer, not just for my child, but for all children, for pedestrians. And I think we also need to think about different ways that we can connect different parts of the village. We talk a lot about parking. We talk a lot about flooding. I don't think we need more parking lots. I think we have to be more creative about how we're getting around and encourage bike riding as much as possible. I know that a lot of residents have asked me about having a bike lane. A lot of residents when I've been knocking doors and canvassing, residents want more sidewalks and they want the village to be more walkable. So I just think that's such a huge, important issue, and I think it ties into flooding, which of course is our number one. And I do want to lead the village in coming together and work on some of the divisiveness in the community. I also think that this is a destination for the arts. I live right across the street from the Emlyn Theater. It's a gem in our community. My husband's performed there before, my uncle in the Pure Prairie League has performed there before, and I want to keep this village a destination for the arts and for artists.
So, I think that it's hard to identify to two issues, and I think if I have to pick two, I will say fiscal responsibility, because I'm very concerned about budgeting. I'm concerned about this massive amount of bonding that we seem to be committing to, almost $6 million this past week for November 13th. So I'm really focused on making sure we have our financial ducks in order. And I also am very concerned about civility, because it can be challenging to be at board meetings. I know people don't want to attend board meetings, and we can't solve community problems if people don't feel comfortable working as a group to solve those problems. And I think I'm going to go back to Tony Ryan, who was a trustee, a beloved Village of Mamaroneck trustee, who said when I first took office, you don't make decisions that you always think are the best. You make the decision that you think is the best for the most people. And I think that many people have different priorities, and they have different issues as their most important issue, and I'm not sure my two issues are as important as issues of the residents. And so what I'm looking to find is I want the village meetings to be a safe space where everybody can bring their issue to the village, because I don't know what an issue is if I haven't heard about the issue. Thank you.
Okay, now candidates will give their closing statements, and Ms. Chin first, please.
Now is a critical time in our village, a time when just choosing the status quo is not enough. We need leaders who will tackle the challenges of our village with thoughtful and ambitious action. I'm a lifelong educator and champion of the arts. I've demonstrated that I know how to work hard and navigate institutions to enact change. I've always been actively involved in Mamaroneck schools, and I will serve as a bridge between the board and the school community. Throughout my work as a flood recovery volunteer and land use board member, I understand the difficult issues ahead of us on a personal level. I took charge at the shelter at the courthouse the night of our last rain event, and I saw firsthand the devastating impact that flooding is having on our community. I'm open-minded, engaging, friendly, and knowledgeable, and I'll use these traits to connect with my constituents. For me, this campaign is beyond political, it's personal. The village is my home, and it's shaped me and my family into who we are today. It's time now to elect a leader who understands not just the history of Mamaroneck, but the future. I'm hoping that my children and their children can live in Mamaroneck and enjoy its charming character that I love so dearly. Tonight, I'll leave you with Brian Stevenson's words of wisdom. We cannot be full, evolved human beings until we care about human rights and basic dignity, and that all of our survival is tied to the survival of everyone. That our visions of technology and design and entertainment and creativity have to be married with visions of humanity, compassion, and justice. I'm a registered Democrat running on the Working Families Party line, and early voting starts Saturday. Please support me and Mayor Tom Murphy. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank everybody at home who's watching, and everybody who is not watching now but is watching it on LMC Media subsequently. And thanks to LMC Media for always being there for us. I'm asking you to vote me in for a fourth term. I think I have done a creditable job as a village trustee. I think I listen to the public. I think I have learned a lot being a trustee, and I hope that I have earned your trust. And I would ask that you come out on either between next Saturday, the 28th, through the following Sunday, or November 7th, and vote for me and for Sharon to restore civility and thoughtfulness to the village government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.